Hi there. I am Meredith, and I am an astrologer and an intuitive based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Hopefully, all of my technology cooperates with me. I've had some issues with that today. And then also, I'm having a lot of like cars, and there's a bunch of tubers on the river, which I think is great. It's like the tourist season here, which I think is really fun. I actually literally just had to pull myself physically out of the river to make this video. And, this is the first full moon in a while where I've been inspired to make something a little bit meatier, a little bit more to digest. And, I feel like there's definitely a reason. This full moon is a huge culmination, and we'll talk all about it. It's interesting how people who are very open in their human design, especially projectors like myself, there's like a certain type of drained that like only we are familiar with. And yeah, so if I feel like I'm kind of like low energy or like not maybe like the most like energized, and I don't necessarily, I don't think have to be to make like a quality video. So definitely had to pull myself from the resting and the river, but felt very guided to, because this full moon is very intense and very important in my opinion. I don't I mean, and I always talk about a little bit my perception of the moon. I'm a very solar person and struggle sometimes with the moon, or like I recognize that there's something that archetype that at one time might have been way more real. Like say, I think of the moon right now kind of as like an artificial imposition, but that doesn't mean that at one time we didn't have like a genuine moon. So yeah, I don't, that's that's like a whole other like wormhole in my mind. And that's another part of being kind of sleepy, is that like we're gonna go on a journey with this, talking of this full moon. So yeah, let's see. So what is a full moon? Let's just start there. A full moon is when the sun sign is in the sun is in an opposite sign to the moon, which casts both a like reflection and an illumination. So in a sense, we're like, there's a buildup of energy, obviously, like in the time preceding the full moon. And then after the full moon, there tends to be a little bit of like a, oh, like I can relax. And, it's a little less like chaotic. But in the buildup phase, a lot of people coming up to a new moon report having bad sleep and like not, maybe like if you work in some type of like service-based industry, then you're really noticing like the crazies coming out. And I personally feel that this full moon is extremely intense. I don't feel that way about every full moon. Sometimes they come and go, and I blink and I'm like, okay, it's like I didn't feel that at all. But I'm also like not a very lunar person. I'm a very solar person. That could explain why. But I wanted to make a big long talk about this full moon in particular because of the kind of culmination that it is. This full moon is in Capricorn and the sun is in Cancer. So the sun is going to oppose the moon, and we're going to see a couple of themes come out. So obviously this is like very much like the matriarchy ruling or duking it out with the patriarchy, because I feel like Capricorn is very much like, the father, Cancer is the mother, right? So, this has to do with like your relationship with your parents, your relationship with authority, how you view family and work. And that's kind of a balancing act for a lot of people, especially people who have children or who are taking care of elderly parents or like what have you. There's a sense of personal responsibility and being like duty bound and obliged to things, even with Cancer, because it is kind of interacting with Capricorn. There's a need to really show up. Like, I feel like if you want somebody to depend on, regardless of how you feel about how they show up, Cancer and Capricorn, I feel like personally are dependable, though obviously Cancer is a sign that very much like waxes and wanes with the moon. So a lot of people, you talk to like with Cancer really prominently in their chart, you'll speak to them, one day, and then 2 weeks later, you'll speak to them again, and you might see a completely different person in front of you and interacting with you. So I think that's fascinating. Cancer is the realm of the emotions. It's like the subconscious or like slightly below consciousness, like moment to moment to moment emotional experience. And it's also like, like a mother wound and father wound, like this falls really nicely in line with that. I would say that we can tend to be very comfort and like security seeking, both in different ways with these two signs, as well as, I just feel that there's a certain softness and warmth that Cancer brings, where maybe there's a toughness and coldness with what Capricorn brings. If you think about like Cancer season beginning the summer and then Capricorn season beginning the winter, it's like these are like very different energies. Obviously they're polarity, but the energy of Capricorn has been undergoing some deep stuff in the last, really, truly ever since I was born, and even a little bit before that. Uranus and Neptune both made their transit through Capricorn, and I think that shows up as a lot of daddy issues. I feel like Masaki and both Masaki and Robert Phoenix talk about that, how that kind of like puts a prominent like daddy issue signature over people who have those placements, and very complex relationships to things like empire, institution, systems. I like to view in general our lives as a microcosm of the macrocosm. So as much as like for someone like myself, I might view like this idea of empire or this idea of like conquest or like exploitation as something that is kind of outside of me in a way, or like I have a hard time identifying with it or understanding the mode in which someone would have to be to get in that kind of domination, subversion, and control kind of vibe, right? Which is what we're ultimately dealing with now since 2008, when Pluto moved into Capricorn. And so I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about that on a collective level. That was when the banking crisis really got, or not the banking crisis, I guess. Maybe it was a banking crisis, a financial crisis and a housing market collapse in 2008, followed by a recession. That started off this transit. I believe that what happened to precede that was probably extremely criminal, just like the wealth transfer that we saw at the beginning of 2020. And like even before that, in the years from when I was born, 1991, 1992 through to 2020. Lots of massive wealth disparities developing during that time and continuing. And there's very much at this point where we are right now, which is in the US Pluto return, really strong window. It's exact right now. And, to me, that's difficult. That's calling up a lot of fear around security and having what the fuck we're gonna need. And there's a lot of stuff going on with that. There's a fear of control and further subjugation, domination, all of these things that seem to kind of repeat and come in cycles, right? So, I feel Earth and this planet goes through like in terms of, I'm looking long game, like over the course of like many, 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 many years. There have been other resets prior to this one, the Great Reset. There have been, it's like the lamest reset too, which is the funniest part about it. But like, there have been other resets prior to this reset. And I think that it's funny to me because I think of like the lockdown snap into a more tyrannical system of governance to be very connected to that, like drawing closer and closer to the end of the age, which also comes with things like earth changes, high strangeness, things like that. I'm just, sharing what I've remembered, right? So in looking at this Great Reset kind of thing, right now, like the elite class or the predator class or the billionaire class, or you could think of them however, they have pretty much everything while the people have like nothing. And I'm sorry, but like what's happening in Sri Lanka right now, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Sri Lanka, sorry, has erupted in massive protesting and has really risen up against its gosh, I don't know if I would call it negligent. There's so many different words for like their government and like really all governments right now. But anyway, that energy that you're seeing in Sri Lanka is something that throughout this year and next, we can expect more of that. We can expect more of people not having anything else to lose. So therefore they rise up. And I'm sorry, but like, it's pretty wild what's happening there. And I would definitely check it out. And it's kind of interesting that it's happening while the North Node and Uranus are getting closer together. Definitely going to make another video about that very shortly, because I think that is a very interesting transit. And got a little piece of citrine in my hand. It's helping me for whatever reason. Yeah. So, it's like there is this kind of question, at least with us and the US, of like, how, and there is it's worldwide, like because Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces is collective, is global, it's like how do we relate to empire? Where do we have Capricorn in our chart? What part of our chart has been literally like turning and burning and turning and burning? Because not only was Pluto in Capricorn in January, like from 2008 to really until still, until next year I guess, like, let me see. I'll talk about Pluto and Aquarius some other time. Let me not get on that wormhole. So in discussing Pluto in Capricorn, that's been a long transit, and it came into very intense conjunctions at the beginning of 2020 that I believe changed everything. Like literally we could have hopped over a world line and then another one and then another one. And obviously everything that's weird is happening like with CERN. So there's a lot of like personal timelines changing, both naturally and artificially. It's very interesting what's going on with CERN specifically. And I'm just kind of keeping my eye on that and, trying to keep track of when time like ceases to make sense in my life, or like when time kind of glitches or there's like a bleed over. I know that that's like really intense Pisces word salad, but I think that there's definitely some interesting things going on with time and with respect to the cycles that opened in 2020 of Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter and Pluto. And I've talked about this before. I made a video about it. I'll link it in the description about time and those conjunctions, and I'll not get too caught off guard within that. But in our own personal lives, it was an opportunity for us to really rise into ourselves, to burn away a lot of shit that is not working. And because after those aspects in the part of your chart that you have Capricorn, that stuff is not working anymore. There's like nothing left in that part of your life, literally. Like it's burn it all to the ground and start over anew with those conjunctions in 2020. Like there was in 2019, it was all about the endings, all about the endings. And then still endings are beginnings. So in some senses too, 2020 was an ending. It initiated an ending cycle and a beginning cycle. So these aspects in our lives were so transformative. And this is what I'm saying about the micro to the macro. There was so much societal change and so much craziness in 2020. And still those cycles are in operation, like for the whole decade, definitely those cycles are in operation. And so, you know, this is part of the energy that we're in, that kind of crazy transformation and change of a whole society. That kind of thing, though, with this aspect is happening as well on the inside of us. It's as above, so below. So it's happening on all levels. And it's kind of exciting. It feels, for me anyway, as a growth junkie, it feels very exciting time to be alive and to be participating in this. I don't know. But regardless of how maybe hard it might get or how challenging it could be to like face a lot of aspects of ourselves, which I feel like Capricorn demands. You know, Cancer and Capricorn is your relationship to power, your relationship to authority, your relationship to your emotions, your emotional body. It's very complex, you know, and so this is also one of the most, so this full moon is happening in a conjunction to Pluto. And Pluto has to do with transformation, death and rebirth. This full moon is so aspected. That's why I just feel like it's a huge culmination. So Pluto with this moon is going to likely have us in a pretty, you know, tumultuous place. There could be a little bit of a hero's journey that this full moon sparks within us, where we're like, I mean, for me, I can only speak to myself for myself, but have such a clear like mental revelation and coming into today that I just need to fucking burn it all down. Some of the constructs are like even relationships in my life that are like not really like working or not really reciprocal or don't bring out the favorable aspects of me that I, you know, some people, you know, just based on their body chemistry, their, you know, mind, whatever, like the way that you interact with them, it doesn't bring out your best parts. And I mean, you know, it's like, it doesn't really have to be, you know, Cancer is kind of like emotionally thin-skinned and like can really like cry at the drop of a hat, right? Capricorn is learning when to kind of detach and like take yourself a little bit back and look at the situation for how it is. So that's kind of challenging right now. That's a little bit of a, that's definitely a pull. Oh, excuse me. I need some water. I'm going to pause this and then I'm going to come right back to it after I drink some water, but I'll try to hold my place. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I will be right back. Getting back to what I was discussing. Sorry, I'm very tired, y'all. This full moon is in a it's in a positive aspect to a lot of planets, and it has some challenging aspects to certain planets, but it's so aspected. And also, just as an aside, there are so many planets past the 20th degree right now. So in astrology, there are degrees, something called decans, or like, you know, the 30 degrees of each sign broken into tens. So there's the first decan of each sign, the second decan, and the third decan. And, you know, a lot of planets right now are going into their third decan, and there is a lot of like culmination, like learning, like what the lessons of all of these signs were about. And these are some big planets and some big influences pretty much, except for, I believe Mercury and Jupiter, and maybe one other planet. There's a lot of things right now that are like in the 20th, like that are at the 20th degree point and beyond. So there's a lot of like maturity and fruition that's outside of all of the narratives and all of the BS nonsense. I think of that as very much like happening regardless, in terms of like people's fruit coming, like, you know, people's plants, trees, whatever. either coming to bear fruit or not, right? So one of the other aspects that is being made to this full moon is a positive aspect to Uranus and the North Node in Taurus, which are about to connect at the end of this month and the beginning of next month. You know, North Node in Taurus is all about planting those seeds and really watering them and occupying more like the Venusian energy of collaboration, you know, not having such a fast advanced pace of things, you know, and really just trusting that the things that you're building over time will amount to something and will lead into something. North Node in Taurus is a very fertile energy, regardless of what the world looks like right now. That is accessible because I am experiencing it, so I know that it is accessible. But this full moon making a trine to Uranus means that the change that we want to see through, oh my gosh, there's a little, all right, moth or something. So, but I'm going to look up the definition of moth real quick so that I can see if there's maybe any relevance for this outside of, I cannot minimize Zoom when I'm recording this meeting. That's lame. So I can't open up any other windows or I want to look up, well, maybe I'll pause and then I'll look up the definition of moth and then I'll come back. This is going to be kind of a choppy video. All right. So I did indeed want to share with you the spiritual meaning of at least the black and brown moth, because this definitely does have some significance. I can't remember which color it is, but they both resonate. So yeah, let's see. At least with this full moon in particular. So it says black is traditionally associated with death and mourning. But as we know, black is traditionally associated with death, mourning, but as we know, death is also associated with transformation, another important symbol or aspect of moth symbolism. Another possible interpretation is that a black moth is linked to your shadow self. It could be a sign that it's time to reassess your assumptions and beliefs. Are you allowing yourself to be held back by negative thought patterns? The moth is prompting you to consider whether that is the case. Brown moths, on the other hand, are thought to be linked to domestic life, which the moon is in astrology linked to domestic life. The message here may relate to family life, particularly your relationship with your mother, which is something that the moon also represents, and Cancer, and Capricorn is the father, right? They are also thought to be connected to financial issues. So that gets to the other thing, right? And I was just talking about the trine to Uranus and the North Node, which are procuring a crazy change in our financial system that is going so far beneath the radar. Like, I think that inflation is obvious right now, but the next economy is like not so obvious and is kind of like hiding itself, which I think is a nice euphemism for like Pluto and Capricorn. So Uranus and the North Node connecting, as well as this full moon, highlights like, have you planted your seeds on fertile ground? It's okay if not all of them come to fruition, or if you feel a sense of dissatisfaction, then that is a signpost maybe that things in your life need to change. This is one of the most advantageous full moons possible for change and transformation and rebirth and all of that stuff. So yeah. And this full moon will make an opposition, a wide one, albeit an opposition to Mercury. So, this is kind of like with our conscious mind and with our conscious self, on some level, we are kind of seeking like emotional comfort, emotional stability. We're seeking what feels good and what consoles our emotions and maybe even validates them. But this is difficult because I think that the full moon comes in with very staunch, sobering clarity. Absolutely. So I think that there might be no mistaking like what isn't working, in your situation and in your life. So, maybe good to like watch your mind a little bit. I think that in the new age, there's definitely this kind of like wanting to get someone out of their mind, out of their mind, out of their mind. But our mind is what we use for logic and reason, and I think under like a full moon with Mercury, like in opposition to it, there is kind of like a need to keep your mind in check, at least to not allow it to completely run the show, to use it in Cancer for what it's for, which is feeling into the various aspects of your life. If something is making you feel incredibly invalidated, unseen, unimportant, if something doesn't feel like family, if something doesn't feel emotionally comfortable, this is your signal. You'll know by tomorrow. So, although I feel like everything that's coming out is like what seems like a personal revelation for us, tomorrow is like the culmination of realizations that we've had through some of these transits already. So I don't think we're learning anything new. Always learning something new, but you know what I mean? Like this seems like peak clarity that comes after like a time of trying and trying and trying to get clear. So this full moon is making a beautiful sextile to Neptune, which is, if you think about Neptune in Pisces, Pluto and Capricorn with the full moon, that's very much like, I love the Leo King, by the way. I'm a Leo King stan. I don't care. I love him. I think he's great. He has a very strong mind for astrology. And he's the person I think that really helped me to see the destiny defining and defying components of Capricorn and Pisces, the mystical sea goat, if you will. So definitely there's a mystical thread and undertone, which really is there anyway when Pluto is involved in any way, shape, or form. It's like underworldish a little bit, but it only goes to show too, like the results of like the shadow work that we may or may not have been doing this whole time. Like, sometimes I'll get like trolls and people who don't agree with me, and I get that on some things, and I think that that's actually healthy, and like I welcome people to disagree with me on things. But when that type of like disagreement is founded on such a strong foundation of mind control, it's harder for me to take seriously. But usually whenever I get trolled, I do look within myself and ask the question of like, okay, is there something of legitimacy to this? So if there's any like criticism that you receive, that Cancerian kind of like emotionally a little bit volatile in the opposition to the full moon is going to instinctually want to like push that energy away, or like is going to want to really like shirk off any criticism that we may receive or any reflections. But I think that it's really empowering to look at your shadow self, and that's a huge part of this, the spiritual component at least of this full moon. It can be like an integration of many selves, many aspects. With all of these aspects it's making, I'm going piece by piece, piece by piece by piece. So this full moon is going to be widely squaring Chiron. So there's some emotional wounding, discomfort, feeling kind of put on the spot, or like put on, it's not emotionally comfortable or comforting kind of day. I can sit here and say, oh, it's going to be super easy. But to me, this full moon looks like, a turn and burn cycle that happens very fast, like a transformation, at least when it comes to individual people's lives, especially who have planets in the last 10 degrees of all these cardinal signs. I mean, those people are getting hit right now, like with main character energy problems. And the cardinal signs definitely have had like a little bit of a break last year, but man, like so much going on within the cardinal signs. There's a lot of new things being initiated in this realm. So, pretty sure my computer just had a seizure, which is a great fun time indeed. I mean, I have Uranus and Capricorn in my first house, so I fry technology without meaning to. So, we do our best. So with the square to Chiron, emotionally uncomfortable, definitely like calling forth this like individual awkwardness that we all feel within the collective landscape on some level, with a lot of the changes. So let's see, this full moon is actually making a semi-sextile to Saturn. This is interesting, right? So Saturn is the planet that rules Capricorn. It's the planet that has to do with, lessons, putting the work in, being maybe a little bit sober or serious, is the father of time. So rules over like the linear movement of time. I think it's interesting that the ruler of Capricorn is sort of blind to, sorry, I just kind of had like a brain fart. So the ruler of Capricorn is Saturn. Saturn is hiding from the full moon. So in a sense, it's like not knowing on some level what to commit your energy to. It's a little bit of a mystery, though the full moon will move on quickly. And it's also going to be in conjunct Venus. So I'm just going to say, like right now, Venus is in conjunction to Neptune that becomes exact on July 14th. And that's awkward. That's weird. Flashback to 2020 when Venus went retrograde in Gemini in May and June, and then stationed direct and made all of these squares to Neptune. So there's a massive like obfuscation of truth and of massive obfuscation of truth, and in our own personal lives it's like moving through and wading through some pretty serious and significant confusion, though I do feel like Venus coming into Cancer, which is lovely, is going to make a little bit more sense in our relationships and with what's happening with money as well. There's a lot of like moving money around that kind of shows up in terms of like the powers that were, and also like maybe there's some confusion personally with like what are we doing with our resources and like what the fuck is going on. It's kind of like that a little bit with this Venus square to Neptune. Venus in Gemini does require us to kind of split our mind in a couple of different directions too. And, there's a lot of busyness that goes on within that energy. On July 20th, the sun is going to make a aspect to Pluto, an opposition. I think for the States, that's going to be rough. So I just wanted to share that on July 20th. Kind of looks like some weird news within regards to the States. In the USA chart, the sun is in Cancer, and then Pluto is obviously at the 27th degree of Capricorn. So may not be like the best time for the States, but I just can't like emphasize enough that regardless of what's going on in the tales of empire collapse, this is such a huge opportunity for people in the States. In the United States, I find that there's a very similar type of energy to some of the like inverted and corrupt aspects of Atlantis. And I think that really like there is a lot right now that is connected to the pre-fall and the post-fall of Atlantis. There is like literally like a script in our life and our like on the screen that is based on that time. So I kind of think that, you know, the more that people can kind of have like personal memory of what some of that is through their own like, you know, practice and their own personal revelation, the more that some of the stuff that's going on in the world and in the States is going to make a lot more sense. And I like to listen to, obviously Steiner is a big influence for me in terms of like the way that he perceives something spiritually. You know, obviously I don't agree with anybody about anything, but, or about everything, but Gigi Young is also a really, really good resource with regard to the planetary spheres and other civilizations, in case you're listening to kind of like retrieve a little bit of memory or a little bit of that cellular resonance. I think that that's a very good resource to call upon. You know, in Atlantis, like the late stage, they were messing with all kinds of technology and all kinds of, you know, different types of like viruses from animals and humans like merged together. And we see where that led people. So anyway, yeah. I think that having like that kind of connection to the transpersonality of this time, which means like there's something that is very transpersonal or like cosmic fishbowl about the signs Capricorn through Aquarius through Pisces. There's something that's very, like I said, like the mystical sea goat of destiny. And like you're either working with that or you're working against that. And, you know, some of the choices kind of gets into a little bit the free will versus like predetermination, and like how much of this is predetermined and how much of it is free will, and is free will illusory in any way, and like in what way. You know, these are kind of questions that are maybe a little bit more broad that I find come up with this full moon. You know, since Cancer and Capricorn are so connected, both of them, to the energies of emotional manipulation and also of power. These two things, I feel like with the Cancer and Capricorn thing that's going on right now in the world and since 2020, because remember, like we came into 2020 with the North Node moving through Cancer, AKA stay at home, cultivate your home space so that you can stay at home, you know. With that energy, there's a lot of emotional manipulation and relationship to power. So I want to go over a couple of things, at least in terms of like energetic dynamics. You know, one of the most important parts of my process in the last 2 years is gaining, and really the last several years, honestly, this is like an ongoing thing, but is gaining an even deeper understanding of energy dynamics between people, and, you know, principalities or institutions or powers or whatever you want to say about it, right? So, you know, when you're standing in the presence of someone, you know, let me just kind of back up and make some first, like, kind of foundational statements. We all have, every living human being has an energy field that surrounds your body. So, you know, it has layers. It's definitely like a moving, living representation of what's going on within your energy centers. So kind of like your energy centers kind of branch out and create your auric field, right? So that's your energy. That's your spirit, your soul, your like what you have going on, right? Okay, so say that you're like everyone else on this planet, and maybe there's a little bit of trauma that you have experienced, right? So, okay, so you go through a series or 1 or 2 or however many traumas, you know, definitely like there's certain parts of astrology and certain aspects in the birth chart that can really like show if someone has been through just like an inordinate amount of trauma too, you know, that exists, right? Check for your Scorpio, Pluto, 8th house aspects, you know. But when you experience a trauma, a part of you kind of splinters off. So think about like a hole being formed in the space around you, AKA your energy field or your electromagnetic field, right? So a hole is formed, or like a puncture. That part of you, since time is fake as fuck, we all know, and I just spend all the time in the world talking about that. So here's this this aspect of you that, you know, has kind of splintered off from yourself and is now running like the very same energy pattern as if that part of you is stuck in that point in time, right? So the goal of this work, and the goal of a lot of the stuff that I do with people and that I do with myself, because I wouldn't do it with people if I didn't do it with myself first, you know, is going back and collecting and bringing like these, the aspects of, you know, us that have been forgotten or left behind. And I'm sorry to say, but this is not specific to just this life. So, you know, we all have like a journey that we take as a soul, and, you know, that's a whole process, and that kind of stacks us in the direction of predispositions to certain traumatic experiences, energetic types of conditions and orientations and things like that. So if you're in a field of energy with someone, say like your energy field is connecting with theirs, and suddenly you feel very small, like as in you feel like you need to pull your energy field in, you need to shrink in response to that person, you know, you need to you know, kind of like you need to like hide or like come into yourself, and not in a good way. That's a feeling that's corresponded to someone overpowering you in energy. And this can happen with people. You know, I'm going to go all the way there with the woo and say this can also happen with entities, spirits, thought forms, demons, whatever, like you want to call it. A lot of the entities that I see with people are like self-created. So that's a whole other topic for a different day. You know, yes, your thoughts are powerful enough to knock your shit off your shelf. Sometimes the haunting is you. I'm not saying that to be a jerk. I'm just saying that I dealt with a lot of this in my life as someone, just a lot of entities, a lot of, I still deal with it. It's a process. Honestly, eating meat and coming back to like raw, like high quality dairy, because I was vegan for years, has really helped me to feel spiritually stronger. And it's interesting that they say that you need to, you know, eat only plant food to ascend or whatever, when I haven't had a vegetable in literally 3 months and am feeling more spiritual than I ever have, ever. So, okay. So that to me helps with emotional sort of like, power dynamics, where I can feel that somebody is trying to use, almost like there's like a hook in or a line in to my energy field and my body even, maybe. And that comes from me having an opening, which means that within me, somewhere within that part of me that's stuck in space-time, running that loop and that fragmentation, right? Within that, there's an opening and a resonance you know, with someone who is trying to take power over me, which is just a signal to me from my spirit that there is more work to do. This is all a process. This is all a like working, we're like in the cauldron and we're just like working on this, you know, with our lives. Like that's how I see it. I don't see this as something that changes overnight, though I have had a lot of like profound internal shifts in a very small amount of time. I still see all of this as a process that is unfolding. So at least in terms of like learning about energy, healing yourself, that kind of thing. The dynamics of emotional manipulation, which can be tied into the power dynamics, where somebody kind of has a line into me based on like where maybe I'm open, like I'm pointing to my like third chakra, like I'm like, okay, you know, so where I'm very open, someone is going to be able to get a line into me, into my field, maybe even into my body. That's called an energetic cord or an energetic link, right? And they're going to use my energy to make their energy bigger so that I shrink. If you've ever felt that shrink response, it doesn't feel good, right? It feels contracted. It feels, it's like, it's not a good thing. It doesn't make you feel either seen or recognized, which is very important, at least for human design projectors. It's important for us to go where we're recognized and appreciated always. So, the energetics of emotional manipulation. So we have these traumas, we have these openings in our energy field that we are slowly but surely healing and resolving and, tending to ourselves. But, emotional manipulation comes in kind of like a hook. It gets into the soft spot, so to speak. We all have causes that we care about. We all have things that I feel like everybody watching this channel, regardless of your belief systems, because I know I have like a wide array of people who watch this channel and different types of belief systems. And I fuck with all of that. I want all of the variety in that way. I don't want to be in an echo chamber, but there is like I feel like, at least among the people who are drawn to me, a significant care for people. And I think that the care for people can often lead into, both on a micro and macro level, us being taken advantage of. It's good to care about people, have empathy and compassion for others. I mean, I'm personally a very relational creature. I've said that over and over on here. I love people and I care about them. But I think part of this full moon as well, with the Cancer and Capricorn dynamics, is how much of yourself are you giving away? That's not good, to like give ourselves away to something, or to allow something that is appealing on our kinder, softer parts, to take advantage of us and lead us in a direction that doesn't ultimately give us anything. So just wanting you to recognize kind of, there can feel like a little bit of a pulling sensation if you're physically sensitive with both. And I really enjoy personally, like getting into my visual kind of clairvoyant and imaginative space and literally just like clearing the cobwebs, the cords, and literally like just plugging the holes with gold. Usually, I'm sure everybody is shocked by that, but I think that that's a really helpful thing to do, just to kind of imagine those holes clearing, which you'll be surprised, the as above, so below aspect of your life, by, visually and energetically closing the holes in your electromagnetic field. This is going to like literally cause circumstances in your life to form around the intention of the energy work that you just did on yourself. So if you do that every day, closing the holes, sealing it off, where your weak spots are, then in your reflection, you may be able to spot sooner when you've been emotionally manipulated. And I'm not just talking about the whole propaganda aspect of this time. Some of it is subtle. And you just have to, I think, be a little bit more maybe energetically aware right now and like throughout this decade than other decades that have taken place. So with that, I am going to put at the I'm going to put at the beginning this. I think I'm going to edit this video and make it a little fancy, but I'm going to write on my Substack about how this will impact every sign. So if that's something that you're interested in, go to Virgo Venus Pisces Moon.substack.com. And yeah, thank you. Bye.